Welcome to Ask a Deer Processor. Today we ask, hey Chuck, how do you trim the shoulder and front leg?
When we get into the shoulders, the animal was shot through the shoulder, so we want to try to trim off any of the material that was, contaminated. This area right here where the shot went through, we want to make sure we trim that out. Actually, we prefer, when we're removing that shoulder, if we could have trimmed out that where the shot was, we would have done that before that even got laid on the table. We could have trimmed that area off. Now, this deer front shoulder, we've got the shoulder blade kind of laying like at that angle. We've got the humerus leg bone running through at this angle, and then the lower shank coming right down there. So when we're cutting this, we're going to have one bone that's going that way, one bone that way, and one bone that way. And we just got to allow our knife to remove that muscle tissue away from those bones, so you kind of know what that anatomy is. And the shoulder blade laying here on this surface is flat, so it's going to be very easy for us to take that muscle off of that portion. So when we're cutting the shoulder, it's not a bad idea to kind of remove the pieces of meat kind of in the natural seams of the muscle. Because if there's any blood clots and stuff, they would probably be in between the muscle groups rather than actually in the muscle. Now we're just going to, remove the meat from the shank. There again, if you wanted to save these shanks as a bone-in cut, you could. Then I'm going to take the meat off the top of the shoulder, the humerus, this main long bone in the shoulder, and then I'm going to run my knife along the shoulder blade here. Basically what I've done is just taken the meat off of the top of each of these bones so that we can easily see where the bone is to remove the meat from it. Now we'll go ahead and take off this meat off of the humerus. Take off this chunk of fat. Loosen this muscle on the front side of the shoulder blade. In fact, you can take that off. If you've done a good job of taking it off, there's a ridge that runs down the back of the shoulder blade. This would have been the outside of the animal. This ridge of bone is going that direction. And what I did was just kind of took my knife and I just kind of scooped that out so that could, I've got all the meat trimmed away from that part of the shoulder. Run my knife down the other side of the shoulder, and I'm going to start just by kind of loosening the meat, pulling away from the bone, the meat staying on the table. And I've removed the bone from the muscle. I'll go ahead and trim off any other meat that's still on the shoulder blade and on the shank and on the humerus. There again, if you were wanting to make some bone broth or something, you can by all means cut up the bones and use those, but otherwise they go into scrap. If the deer has been shot through the shoulder, you'd have to trim off any contamination, but by and large, this is all, intact, and there's, no blood clots in it, so this is ready to be cut up into, for a roast, or can go into your tub for your ground materials. If you're going to use anything for a roast, you're basically going to be using this bigger, thicker portion. That would be the roast that you'd use. This would be a piece of meat that, if it was in a beef, this would be a chuck roast.
Is that your favorite roast, Chuck?
Yes, it is, actually. This chuck roast is something you would moist heat cook in a crock pot with some potatoes and carrots or something. It's very desirable.
Thanks again to Riverbend Wild Game and Sausage Company. You can learn more about Illinois Learn to Hunt at learntohuntil.com.